Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the weirdest, most famous stories ever written, Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. But we're not just going to talk about a man turning into a bug, we're going to map the actual breakdown of his mind. So here's the question, right? The whole idea is completely bizarre, but the story, it feels weirdly real. It's like a nightmare you could have yourself. It totally gets under your skin because it taps into something deep about how our minds work. And more importantly, how they can fall apart. To really get why, we need to kind of push aside the usual literary analysis for a second. Instead, we're going to use this incredible tool from cognitive neuroscience called the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM for short. So let's get into it, mapping the mind, the two waves of thought. The whole idea behind the BKM model is that our thoughts, all of our thoughts, from making a grocery list to having a crazy dream, are created by two basic waves of brain activity bumping into each other. Okay, first up, you've got the algorithmic wave. The easiest way to think about this is like your brain's blueprint. It's all the logic, the plans, the routines that you use to get through the day. You know, the part of your brain that makes a to-do list and actually follows it. And then you've got this second wave, the emotional one. So if the algorithm is the blueprint of the house, your emotion is the color you paint the walls. It's all your feelings, your moods, your gut reactions, and impulses. So your mind is constantly doing this little balancing act. On one hand, you have that logical, structured algorithm. And on the other, you've got that spontaneous, raw emotion. A healthy mind doesn't just pick one, it gets them to work together, in harmony. Now here's where the magic really happens. It's a process called coupling. This is when your logic and your emotion literally lock together and they reinforce each other to create a stable, focused mind. It's that feeling you get when a plan just feels right, you know? Your head and your heart are pointed in the same direction. All right, now let's use this. A daydream collapsing, mapping Gregor Samsa's mind. We can actually map the metamorphosis as this very controlled daydream where those two mental waves just tragically come apart at the seams. We're literally about to watch a mind collapse. We can actually track Gregor's mental collapse across 5 clear stages. It all starts with his super stable but really rigid, routine-driven mind, and it's going to end in what the model calls a terminal state, which is basically a total shutdown of consciousness itself. Just look at this. Before the transformation, Gregor's mind is all algorithm. It's all routine, with almost no emotion. But the second he wakes up as a bug, his logic completely shatters, and pure panic, pure emotion takes over. This is what the model calls a total phase mismatch. The two waves are just catastrophically out of sync. And as the story moves forward, his structured human thoughts get replaced by these fragmented, almost insect-like routines. And his emotions, which were spiking with panic, just kind of dull down into this grim, hopeless resignation. You can see the waves are just flattening. And this gets us to the most critical point. Gregor's death in the story isn't just him dying. From this BKM point of view, it's a continuum collapse. It's a total breakdown of the mental waves that kept his mind going. The light of his consciousness just winks out. All right, so the chaotic sleep dream. What if Kafka lost control? See, Kafka's story is a very carefully structured daydream, right? He's guiding it with his artistic logic. But what would it look like if it was more like a chaotic sleep dream? You know, like the crazy ones we have when we're actually asleep. And this is where things get really, really weird. The BKM model can actually let us simulate what the story would be like as a totally chaotic sleep dream, where raw emotion just runs wild, with no logical frame to hold it back. So in this sleep dream version, logic just completely breaks down. Symbols become totally fluid and bizarre. The anxiety Gregor feels about his boss isn't just a feeling anymore. His boss's words literally become beetles that scuttle away. Scenes and objects just morph into each other, with no warning. It's driven purely by emotional links, not a straight plot. That apple his father throws at him, a symbol of rejection, it merges with the theme of time and becomes this grotesque clock prison he can crawl inside. And the story itself becomes cyclical, fragmented. It mimics those repetitive, nonsensical loops that we have in our own dreams. There's no way out, just endless, terrifying versions of the exact same room. So if you put them side by side, the difference is just night and day. Kafka's story, The Daydream, it's driven by logic, it follows a linear path. But the sleep dream version, that's driven by raw emotion, making it totally nonlinear, fluid, and illogical. One is a nightmare somebody is guiding you through. The other is just pure mental chaos. Okay, so this brings us to what I think is the most powerful idea in this whole explainer, the mind-to-mind connection. Why does this story have such a profound, lasting hold on us as readers?
Well, the answer seems to lie in this amazing concept called strain synchrony. You can think of it as a kind of resonance, a direct connection between the mental state of the author when they were writing and the mind of the reader while they're reading.
And this is really the heart of it all. By balancing his logical theme with very controlled emotion, Kafka created a very specific mental state as he wrote, what the model calls a coherent strain carrier wave.
So think about it like this. When we get really immersed in reading, our brain doesn't have to build a whole mental world from scratch. It kind of borrows the one Kafka already built. Our own mental waves start to sync up or phase lock with the rhythm of the story he created.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. We aren't just reading a story about a guy who turns into a bug. In a very real cognitive sense, we are stepping into a mental state that Kafka actually engineered for us. We are replicating the wave of his consciousness in our own minds. This just changes everything about how you think about art, doesn't it? What if the greatest stories aren't just narratives we consume, but a form of consciousness we're invited to temporarily inhabit? A direct mind-to-mind connection sent across time and space, just preserved in words on a page. It's a truly staggering thought.